The past explains behavior, but it doesn't justify it. Now, many people, and you've heard perhaps even yourself saying it, perhaps you get upset at what I'm saying here, that they use things that happened in the past to essentially, like I said, justify their behavior. It could be how their parents treat them, or situations in school, or some injustice thing that happened to them. And even though this has an effect, as well, obviously life has an effect on us, a lot of people use this to, even if it's behavior that is not ideal, whether it's to other people or just to themselves, they use it as a way to continue doing it. And they say, yeah, I don't want to do it, but because my parents did this or this happened or whatever, I'm going to continue. I just, as if they don't have a choice, as if they're completely justified because of what happened in their lives up until this point. And on the first side of things, I want to talk about the more understanding is that it does explain it. And it does explain why we have certain impulses, certain tendencies, even certain ways of thinking about things, certain ways of, how we approach life. It's inevitable. Of course, the past shapes the future in a lot of ways, at the very least, our thinking about things. However, it doesn't do it fully. We're not victims of our past. We're not fully dependent on our past. Simply, if we look at it in this way, I can't look at the past of someone and determine the future with 100% accuracy. To say so and to assume I can is to essentially assume I don't believe in free will and that everything is predetermined by what happened to me, what was done to me, my past. And I just simply don't agree with that, because if we go down that path, then again, we just become victims and we say, yeah, I couldn't be disciplined, but that was because of this in my past and my parents never instilled discipline in me. And so what can I do? It's not my fault. If my parents had done it for me, then I would be able to do it, but they didn't. So it's their fault. It's not mine. First of all, it's not fair to you, to everyone else, to the overall circumstances, because it takes control from you. The good way to approach it, as I see it, is to understand that, we can explain why you feel certain impulses and perhaps why you're not as disciplined as you should be and why you struggle more with certain things. But that's as far as it goes. It's to understand. Because if we start allowing ourselves to become victims and to say that I don't have control, well, then you're going to excuse anything. Because you can always find a reason to do whatever it may be. Especially behaviors we don't want to do, because those are, by default, things that are easier to do than not do. If I talk about, the most common, like, I don't know, eating the foods I shouldn't, or going on social media longer than I should, or all of these things, everyone, for the most part, can find situations in their past that they could say, yeah, because this happened and now I can't control myself and I have to do it. But we don't have to. We are not victims of our past, and we can't allow the past to justify and determine our choices for the future fully. It's, if anything, and avoiding going in circles here, we have to use it to understand, and that's it. And from the moment we understand why things are happening, and we understand, because this happened, maybe I feel a bit more inclined to procrastinate or to eat the bad foods, or even on the good sense, to do good, to be understanding. It goes both ways. But we understand and we look at it, and then we look ahead at the future as time that has not been realized yet. And because it hasn't been realized, and we recognize that we have choices, we also or the free will to make choices, we also recognize that I do not have to act upon it, upon thoughts, upon emotions, upon feelings, upon anything. I choose to do it. I choose if I allow the past to dictate the future fully or not. And if you are someone that finds themselves too much in this, even if you don't want to do it, but if you find yourself like too much just blaming other people in the past, and if things coulda, woulda, shoulda been a different way, and why weren't they, and I'm upset at this. I mean, you can do that forever. Everyone can do that to different degrees of injustice or privilege, whatever we want to call it here. But at the end of the day, we can all victimize ourselves, some more, some less, but trust me, everyone can do it. And the thing here is, I think I heard this many years ago by Tony Robbins, is that if you allow yourself to blame the people in the past and situations, all this, for mistakes and problems in your current reality and in your future, then you also have to give them and this past full credit for all the good that happens. And you have to say that, yeah, everything that good, that wasn't me and that wasn't my efforts. It was just, it was all predetermined. It was all the what happened to me in the past. Now that you wouldn't do, and that we don't do, because we just assume like, no, just the bad is not my fault, but then the rest, that's my efforts, that's my conscious acting. Then let's be conscious here. If we are to say that, then we also have to say that the past cannot be responsible for the bad that I do. We cannot allow for this. And so I think it's much healthier to approach it in a manner that we look at it. We don't say that it doesn't have an impact, because it does and it happened. But we look at it to understand why things are happening the way they are, but we don't allow them to justify mistakes, bad decisions, bad impulses. No, we take control. We understand why we are the way we are, but then we move on to become better. Otherwise, we're going to be just like a boat sailing without a sail, and that we're just going to be victim of the current. If I feel this, I got to do it. If I'm upset, I got to act upset. But we don't. We are in control, to a certain extent, of course. So let's act like it. Let's stop blaming everyone around us and recognize that the past happened, but the future hasn't yet. And by that very nature, you have a choice.